My question is, how many people like you do you think are out there? People who were used to be supportive of Republicans, who were looking for another choice. Do you expect we could see a wave of donors like yourself moving toward Kamala Harris?
Well, I certainly think you've seen that since the announcement and the switch away from President Biden. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been raised. And these are entrepreneurs, corporations, Silicon Valley billionaires, Wall Streeters. There's a whole collection of people that understand the danger of Donald Trump. Obviously, Vice President Harris was talking about Project 2025. I would suggest everybody to read it. Mr. Trump is trying to distance himself from it, but all of his acolytes are there writing it. Right there inside Project 225 is the deportation of 15 million immigrants. He says that from the stump. So he's obviously not distancing himself from that. And it represents something that I think is very un-American and very dangerous. And just my last point, what Trump wants to do to NATO and how he wants to help dictators and betray our allies is enough not to support him and do everything that we can to help Vice President Harris win the presidency.
I'm really curious about what your friends in the Republican Party are also saying about Project 2025 and how divisive it is. What does this mean for the Trump ticket moving forward, particularly with J.D. Vance as his running mate?
Well, listen, I think the president's having a hard time with J.D. Vance. I don't think he liked the nomination speech. I don't think he likes the showing of J.D. Vance. Obviously, President Trump is a little bit of a stage actor and a casting director, and J.D. Vance is not well casted. He's frankly very dull. Maybe the J.D. stands for Just Dull Vance. I'm not sure. And so I expect a very big strain between the two of them. Moreover, Mr. Trump's selection of J.D. Vance is not really expanding his electability. I think that was a cocky selection born from short-term rising poll numbers. So he's downing on the nonsense. And I would just ask you to look at some of the political philosophy of Vance and the ideas behind a post-constitutional America that he and his friends often mention. And so
Anthony,
this is super, super dangerous for the United States.
What does it mean for the vice presidential pick that Harris could choose moving forward? Because you and I talked to some of the same people, and in the Republican Party, even among the independents, you have had people who are thinking about either voting or donating more towards the Democratic ticket now. So who does Kamala Harris need to choose to gain broader support?
So I think she's going to choose Senator Kailey from Arizona. I think Mark is a great guy. He's got a lot of different things that can help Senator Harris. I believe not only does he help her in places like Arizona and Nevada, where he's from, but he also helps her in Virginia because of his status as a veteran. And he is somebody who is colorful and charismatic. He can help her raise money. He's an American patriot, and also because of the tragedy that happened to his wife related to gun violence, I think there's a very interesting narrative there that they can tell together. So I'm hoping that he picks her. If he doesn't pick, I'm hoping he picks him. If she doesn't pick him, there's other very capable people, but I like him the best.
Well, as we consider what you like, we obviously know of your affection for crypto, Anthony. And there is a question of what kind of crypto policy a potential Harris administration would pursue. Earlier this week, I spoke with Democratic Congressman Wiley Nickel of North Carolina, a big crypto advocate in the House, and asked him about this. This is what he told me.
I'm really hopeful that we're going to see a little bit of a reset from Vice President Harris. I'm working behind the scenes to encourage them to embrace digital innovation, to keep those jobs here in the United States. So I'm hopeful that we'll see, some good comments come out of this new campaign. We're seeing Donald Trump going to Tennessee on Saturday to give a major speech on crypto. Mm-hmm. We can't let this be a partisan issue. It's got to stay in that bipartisan category.
So, Anthony, my question to you is, given everything we're hearing from Donald Trump about wanting to be pro-crypto if he does get a second turn in the Oval Office, why should someone believe that Kamala Harris would be a better president for crypto than him?
Well, I would say three things. Number one, she is from the Silicon Valley neighborhood, her being from California. She understands the need for innovation. Younger Democrats support crypto. Older Democrats like Elizabeth Warren do not support it. She represents a new age of Democrats. You guys reported on this, so I'll talk about it. I was at an event 2 weeks ago with Mark Cuban, Mike Novogratz, with Anita Dunn and others. It was sponsored by Ro Khanna. And it was an effort to explain to people in the Democratic Party how important it is to embrace propitious and fair crypto regulation. And I think they're going to make steps to do that. You know that she was thinking about going to the Bitcoin conference. I don't think that that materialized, but I think there's steps being made in the right direction. And I do agree with the representative that we absolutely have to make crypto regulatory policy bipartisan. And I think we're going to get there.
How much does she need to really court the crypto community? And in this election cycle, we've seen a lot of crypto money in politics this cycle around and in prior cycles, frankly. And also a lot of concern around what a regulatory environment would look like under another Democratic administration. Would she need a new SEC chief that's not Gary Gensler to gain that support?
Yeah, I think she's going to take steps. I mean, she's had a very busy calendar over the last 5 or 6 days. I think we have to give her some time to gel her policies. I think this will be a dramatic new generation reset for the Democrats. Democrats always do better, Sonali, when they are bolder and doing things that are risk-taking. It's Barack Obama against a war veteran like John McCain, or it's Bill Clinton against a World War II veteran like George Herbert Walker Bush. This represents a very stark contrast. She's now going up against the oldest presidential candidate in U.S. history. She's a bright person. She's very capable. She's put a great team together. And I think she's a very smart, practical person. So let's give her some time to lay out her policies. She may miss some cryptocurrency donations, but I think she's going to get the broader regulatory picture right for the cryptocurrency industry, and I like where we're going.
Anthony, before I let you go, of course, we have to ask you about SkyBridge as well. Bitcoin was a huge boon for you. You guys have made a lot of money in the crypto industry, but there still have been a number of investors who have asked for their money back. What is your plan for this fund? Do you plan to keep it operating, or do you plan to return money to investors at a greater scale?
So, you know, and I appreciate your journalist, Kathy Burton, writing about me every 6 or so months. She makes me very relevant, and every time she writes about me, we go up 10 or 20%. So I hope she continues to write about me. But it's very plain and simple. People signed a prospectus with SkyBridge. We do let people out on a biannual basis. Right now, that tender is at 5%. That's where it's scheduled. We work with our independent board to do that. Some people are saying that we need to increase the tender, but you have to remember something. The wirehouses decided to sell SkyBridge at the bottom. We're up 150 or so percent since they did that. And it was very, very important for us as fiduciaries to maintain the integrity of that portfolio. We have a lot of privates in that portfolio, as an example, and we couldn't just have people rushing to the door with the liquid stuff and leaving the investors like myself and others with the private equity. It just wasn't fair. And if you look at the circumference of the prospectus, as I've told Kathy Burton and others, we operate inside the circumference of that. People are getting out of SkyBridge every 6 months. Every time they do it, unfortunately, I think they're making a mistake, because we've had the best 24 months of performance in the 19-year history of SkyBridge. But we are letting people out. I think it's a misnomer. And, you know, what I would appreciate from Miss Burton, if she doesn't mind, pick up the phone and call me. I'd be very happy to explain it to her as carefully as I'm explaining it to you. I do appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about it. But people signed up for that. Imagine you're in a private equity fund and you have a 10-year hold on a private equity fund, and someone says, well, I got to get out right now, 2 years into the position. Well, I'm sorry, that was the deal. And remember, you're co-entangled with other investors, and so you have to respect each other in that process.